Okay, good evening, everybody. We're now on Parashat Beshalach. That would be Exodus 13, verses 17 and 18. So this is how it starts. It happened when Pharaoh sent the people that God did not lead them by the way of the land of the Philistines because it was near. For God said, perhaps the people will reconsider when they see a war and they will return to Egypt. And God took the people toward the way of the wilderness to the Sea of Reeds, and the children of Israel were armed when they went up from Egypt. I just want you to concentrate on the fact that, and the Kli Yakar is obviously pointing this out now, that there are 3 times the word ha'am, the people are used, and then there's a 4th time that it's referred to the same people, but they're called by the name of Bnei Yisrael. So just to focus, when I read the psukim in Hebrew, notice that the word ha'am, the people, are used 3 times to describe the same people. And the 4th time, it's Bnei Yisrael. And think about the context that it's used in, because the way he's going to phrase his question, it's something that we ourselves could have or should have picked up on. Again, Paro as ha'am. And it was when Pharaoh sent the people, ha'am, that's the first time ha'am is used. V'lo nacham Elokim derech eretz Pelishtim. God did not lead them the way of the land of the Philistines. Ki karov hu, because it was close. Ki amar Elokim pen yinachem ha'am. Here, another time ha'am is used. Because God said that lest the people change their minds, pen yinachem ha'am, birotam milchama, when they see war. V'shavu mitzrayma, and then they would return to Egypt. V'yasev Elokim es ha'am, 3rd time ha'am is used. And God took them around the way, derech hamidbar yam suf, by the way of the desert, the wilderness, by the Sea of Reeds. The Hamushim Alu, I should say 1/5 yet, because we're going to discuss that. Hamushim Alu, they went up armed. Bnei Yisrael, Me'eretz Mitzrayim, the children of Israel from the land of Egypt. So who went up? The Bnei Yisrael went up armed out of Egypt. Where all the other times God said, right, He didn't lead them, He didn't lead the people by the way of the Philistines. Perhaps the people will have reconsiderations and to return to Egypt, but God took the people around the way of the wilderness and the Sea of Reeds. So 3 times you see the word ha'am is used, and the 4th time the word Bnei Yisrael is used to describe the same people in relation to the fact that they went up armed. Okay, so let's begin. The Kli Yakar starts. Okay, we read the verses. V'hi b'shalach paro es ha'am. That's the first time ha'am is used. V'akachach ne'amar pen yinachem ha'am. Right, so He sent out the people. That was Paro that sent out the people. God led them, lest they reconsider. That's the 2nd time ha'am is used. V'yasev Elokim es ha'am. God took them around a different way. V'akachach ne'amar. And after the 3rd time now, Hamushim alu b'nei Yisrael. They went up armed. Who? Bnei Yisrael. So He says, V'yesh YIBONEH. There is to really consider and understand what He's about to say. Lama koram shlosha pamim ha'am. Why are they called 3 times ha'am, the people? U'b'revi'it koram b'nei Yisrael. Whereas the 4th time, they're called b'nei Yisrael, the children of Israel. And when is that? Etzel chamushim. By the fact that it says they went up armed. The hainu, meaning, what is arms? Klei zayin, weapons of war. Kfi hanira, it seems like what is being said here is shimitzad hayosam b'nei Yisrael lo hayotzrichen klei zayin. From the aspect that they were, and the name is significant, they were Bnei Yisrael, that means the children of Israel, they wouldn't really need weapons of war. Vishiluchu Shaparo Hayimisad Hayosim B'nai Israel. Whereas when it refers to Pharaoh sending them out, it doesn't refer to them as B'nai Israel, but it seems that it should have. So it's like the opposite of, it's counterintuitive. So how are we starting out this idea? That first of all, when it calls them B'nai Israel, they shouldn't have needed weapons. Because they're B'nai Israel, the children of Israel, they have God to protect them. Whereas when they're sent out from Egypt, that's when they should have been called B'nai Israel, because that's really what was bothering Pharaoh, that the Jewish people, in their faith, and whatever may come, as opposed to just a regular phrase, a very general phrase of the people. The Kli Yakar says it's the opposite that should have been said. He says, it seems you can answer this up and resolve this issue in two very distinctly different ways. Okay, we'll start with the first. He says the first way is by understanding and quoting what's written in the Midrash. It says, "V'chamushim alu," they went up armed. Ein chamushim ela mizuyonim b'chamisha klei zayin. It means that they went up with 5 different types of weapons. The kasha zeh, what's difficult? He says this is difficult. Why? V'chi milchamatan shel Yisrael tluy b'rivoy klei zayin. What? The wars of Israel is dependent on a massive amount of weapons? Well, lo kativ, is it not written? If you look in Shoftim, that's Judges chapter 5, verse 8. It says, Magen im yire v'ramach b'arbayim elef b'Yisrael. It was a rhetorical question asked then. So when it chose new gods, war came close to its gates, and even a shield or spear seen was even a shield or spear seen among 40,000 in Israel? No, they fought that war through a miracle. There was not one weapon that needed to be lifted in that war. God protected them then. And we have another concept, and that is brought down, that it's the Torah and the prayers of the Jewish people that are their weapons of war. As we see in Psalms, Tehillim, Kuf Mem Tet Vav, that's Psalms 149, verse 6. It says in Psalms 149:6, the lofty praises of God are in their throats, and a double-edged sword is in their hand. So we're talking about something in their garon and in their hands. So here's the part of the verse he brings down, V'cherab hifios biyadam, and it was a double-edged sword in their hands. So you take the word pifiot as a double edge. He says it's like a combination of Shnei piot. It's like the word for the mouth twice, as if there are 2 mouths. What do you need 2 mouths for? Ki shneihem tluim b'peh, meaning both the tefillah and the Torah, that is what is in their mouths, and that is their protection. That is the double-edged sword that is in their hands. Im Kain, if that's the case, Ma Tiferet Zeli Yisrael Sha'alu Chamushim Zuyanim. What is so great? What is so beautiful? What is the glory of the fact that the Jews went up armed with weapons? As if they didn't really have trust b'Hashem Chalila in God. God forbid. No, of course they did. That's another rhetorical question. Even if you want to say, right, we have this concept that everyone has to do all the efforts, the normal efforts in this world. So even if you want to say that a man is obligated to make, according to nature, every effort that he has within his ability to do. And once you fulfill every possible corner, or you look under every rock, or do whatever effort it is, whether it's for Parnasa, to find a wife, to learn Torah, after you've made every effort, so then Hashem takes over and creates a miracle. But he doesn't come in until that effort is made. Nevertheless, this is still difficult. In other words, we're still asking the question, why did the Jews need all these weapons? Isn't Torah and Tefillah enough? Not only that, the verse not only implied that every Jew went up with a weapon, but they all went up with 5 weapons. What is so unique, or why do we need to be told there were 5? Why do we have this number? Why is there such an accounting that there were 5 weapons by each Jew? This is another rhetorical question. What? It just happened on the way that a miracle happened, that everyone happened to have 5 weapons, right? Or just circumstances by happen chance that each one had 5? Not more and not less? Like, hello, just times 600,000 times 5, that's how many weapons they had, and everyone was given and distributed 5? Or just each one looked around one morning and they found that they had 5 weapons on them? Hello, Devaru, this is impossible. This is just not logical. Va'od, he continues and asks, Ki kfi hanira lo hayu Yisrael malumdei milchama klal. It's not even possible. It doesn't sound like they had any weapons training, just from looking at the fact that they were slaves and they were involved in heavy work from morning until night. I'll read it again. Simply looking, they weren't experienced or trained in weaponry, because they were busy with hard labor all day and every day. So what would they have and what would they need these weapons? What benefit are they to them? Because they had no experience with them. It would have been better for them just to go with sticks and stones with their slingshots. Therefore it seems to explain like this. It's actually coming to teach us something. That they actually didn't have any weapons at all. The only thing they had was the 5 books of the Torah. They actually are divided into 7 sections, 7 individual books. Right? We say the 5 books of Moses, but they're really broken down into 7 distinct books. So if you go into YIBONEH, okay, so you go into Numbers chapter 10, verse 35. When the ark would journey, Moses said, "Arise, Hashem, and let your foes be scattered. Let those who hate you flee." Let those who hate you flee from before you. And when arrested, they would say, "Reside tranquilly, O Hashem, among the myriad thousands of Israel." And there are 2 nuns that are inverted or upside down surrounding these 2 verses. That again would be chapter 10 in Numbers, verses 35 and 36. So that makes it as a distinct book on its own. Okay, see, now you have what we originally thought were the 5 books of Moses. So Genesis is a book in itself, Exodus is a book in itself, Vayikra all by itself, so you have 3. When you get to Numbers, Numbers itself is broken into 3 books. That which comes before these 2 verses, the 2 verses themselves are a book on its own, and then everything that comes after that in Numbers till the end of the book of Numbers is another book. So you have 3 books within Numbers, so now you have 6, and Deuteronomy would be counted as the 7th book. V'zeh Amar, now we understand when it says V'chamushim, they went up armed, Hainu Mizuyanim, armed. What is exactly arms? Weaponry? Hakol Remez L'Torah. No, that the weapons are a hint, it's all hinted to the Torah. That's why this language of chamushim is used. It's kind of like, we'll call it a play on words. That yes, chamushim means armed. Right, we have Givat HaTachmoshet. Right, chamushim definitely means arms. There's no question about it. And it says that they went up armed. But we don't read it as armed, or you don't have to read it as armed alone. But you can read it up as they went with their weaponry of war, which is the Torah itself. V'chein mezuyanim. Yes, it has two languages. Also, they went up with weapons. Kilash and Chamisha v'Zayin. In other words, you have two languages here. The word Chamisha is used, and Zayin, because that's what Kli Zayin is. Zayin is 7, and Zayin is arms. Shmois Kli Milchama Hema. Yes, they went up, right, with arms. What is that? The names of the weapons of war. Yisrael Yirmzugam ala Torah. So that hints, right? Whenever you think about weapons of war by Israel, you always must think that it's talking also about the Torah. Oh, another way, Chamushim, like as we just said, Chamushim means Hainu Chamishi Chumshei Torah. That's the 5 books of Moses, Kamor, as we have already said. But it also means Mizuyanim. Mizuyanim is also not just weapons, right? But it also means tefillah. We just originally said that they went up with both HaTorah and the tefillah, both the Bible and their prayers. That was their protection. So basically on the word chamushim, you not only have the word 5, as we already said, but also you have Mizuyanim, that is tefillah. How is tefillah hinted at by the number 7? Because it says in Psalms, this is chapter 119, verse 164, Sheva Bayom Hilalticha. 7 days, we're going to praise 7 times a day, we're going to praise Hashem. Now, what's that referring to? Those are the 7 brachos that we make before and after Kriya Shema, both in the morning and in the evening. He continues, it is well known that the Jewish people were not worthy of receiving the Torah only after they transversed through the Yam Suf, through the splitting of the sea, and only after they transversed through the desert. Ki bi Yam Suf boli de'amuna shlema b'Hashem. It was only through going through the Yam Suf, through the splitting of the sea, that they came to a highest level, a complete level of faith in God, Moshe Avdo, as well as the total complete belief and trust in the prophecy of Moses. Kamosh Ne'emar, as it says later on, actually here in this case, it's later on, chapter 14, verse 31, V'yaminu b'Hashem b'Moshe Avdo, that the Jewish people, after going through the Sea of Reeds, through the splitting of the sea, that they believed in God and in Moses, his servant. The Kodim Shabuli De'amunazu, previously, prior to coming to this state or status of belief and trust, Pshita Shloya Ru'in L'Kabel Torah, then certainly it's obvious they were not yet fit to receive the Torah. That the whole time that they still had some doubts, they were lacking in complete faith, they had certain doubts about the prophecy of Moshe and belief in God. So they weren't roy, they weren't fit. And it was only after going through the splitting of the sea they came to this complete understanding and faith. HaTorah. That only then they were fit to receive the Torah. It was still required of them, furthermore, to walk through this wilderness, a land that had no seed, there was nothing growing there. To do what? To accomplish what? Liknot shama midat histapkut. In order to acquire a trait, a very important character trait called histapkut. Histapkut means that you are satisfied with either a minimum amount or just exactly what you have, and you don't feel you have need for more. Kikach darka shel Torah, because that is certainly the way of acquiring Torah. Everyone wants to acquire Torah. They have to learn histapkut, to be satisfied with a minimum amount. As it says in Pirkei Avot, Pas b'melech tochal. If you want to acquire Torah, you want to be a Talmid Chacham, you want to live a life of Torah, you have to have what we call Pas b'melech. You're going to eat your bread in your salt. And not only that, as we know in this parsha, we're talking about the first time the man is mentioned and the first time we're going to start eating it. So the Torah was not given except to those that ate angel food, that ate this man from heaven. Ki min yiridat haman lamdu der histapkut asher mekabli Torah tzrichim hazeh. And it was only from the time that the man started descending and coming down that they were able to learn this lesson, where they were able to, to receive the Torah. They needed this. Noisef alzeh, in addition to this, nishtashru b'muna yedei nisim shena'asu lehem b'midbar, that it became embedded. It was rooted, this type of faith, through all the miracles that occurred to them while they were in the desert. Kamonise hayamsuf, like the miracles of the splitting of the sea. And to teach them, to place in their heart even more. Now, you have to remember, there's a concept called, there's going to be 6,000 years of the world. And the 6,000 years are broken into 3 units of 2,000 years. So the first 2,000 years is called Tohu. And then we have the time of Abraham Avinu. And around then, he was born in 1948, so around then, towards the end of the 2,000 years, we start the 2,000 years of Torah. And then we have the last 2,000 years, which we're in that period now, and that started about 2,000 years, almost 2,000 years ago, and that's called the era of the Mashiach. Okay, so he just mentions that remember, those first 2,000 years, the whole world was desolate like a wilderness, a desert. Kozman shehu below Torah, because there was a lack. The Torah wasn't given yet. And this generation, they were required to accept the Torah to complete that which was lacking in the world. Before the Jewish people, before Bnei Israel accepted the Torah, they were just like, they were included with all the other nations, that they were not yet separate, nor in their completion, nor in their designation from all the rest of the nations. They were just like any other goy baretz, like any other nation of the world. And for that very reason, they were not called Bnei Israel. They weren't called Bnei Israel until they accepted the Torah. And remember, we're not yet at Har Sinai, so why are they called Bnei Israel? And it would only be through receiving the Torah that they could be called Bnei Israel. And only then they would be separate before Hashem, by Hashem, from all the other nations, to be to Him a special nation. And in this way, we're able to explain the verses in the following way. We said that it was Pharaoh who sent the Am. Well, what was the original question we asked? Why isn't it because of the fact they were Bnei Israel that he sent them? Ha'am is too much of a general description for anybody. At the moment that they were sent, they were still called by the name Ha'am. Because they were not yet separate from the rest of the nations of the world. Because they didn't have their weapons of war upon them. No, they didn't have their normal weaponry. And how do we know that? Because they weren't even trained, so it couldn't have been real natural weapons. And they didn't have that either. They didn't have the Torah either. You know why? Because they weren't yet at Har Sinai. They hadn't received the Torah. So what's bothering us? Should be bothering us that this is also way before Matan Torah, before the revelation. Not only that, they weren't even ready to receive it. Because they had not yet become totally entrenched, engrossed with the true faith in God. That's why that's the reason God did not take the people by the way of the Philistines. Even though that it was close, and that should have been the most logical way. If you plug into Waze, it's going to tell you this is the way to go. No, because God said, lest they change their mind when they see war. Because they were still included amongst all the nations of the world. There was no distinction. Then certainly they would have returned back to Egypt. From the fact they didn't have any weapons. Certainly they would have been decimated if they hadn't returned. Therefore, that's why God turned them around and went by the way of the Sea of Reeds. It was only through going by way of the splitting of the sea and of the desert, the wilderness, they were able to acquire this true and complete faith. And only then they were able to be ready to prepare to receive the Torah. And from that moment on, then they actually had their weapons of war upon them. Because it was if already they had received the Torah. And in other words, once you're ready, it comes to you. And that was then they were actually called the children of Israel. To separate them from the rest of the nations of the world. This is what it means when it says the Chamushim Alu B'nei Israel, that the B'nei Israel, the Jewish people, went up armed. Chamushim, that they didn't go up except with 5 different types of weapons of war. Like we said before, they went up with the 5 books of Moses, which is broken into 7 different Sfarim. Or Shevet Tfilos, or as the 7 different types of prayers that we mentioned, as the 7 brachot that we make on Shema every day, in the morning and in the evening. We say, 3 brachos in the morning and 4 brachos at night. And this is in agreement with what we find in the Midrash. So that God, at the time of the receiving and the giving of the Torah, God strapped on the Jewish people these weapons of war, these weapons. I am Barambam Parshas Kitisa Bapasuk Yatah Harei Eidecha. This is in Shmos. This is in Exodus 33, verse 5. This is right after the sin of the golden calf. The Hashem tells us we must remove from us right now are jewels, and those jewels were the Kli Zion. The Kli Zion, we already said, is the 5 books of Moses. The crown of Torah had to be removed at that moment. Ki misham raya berura shetorah Kli Zainam shetorah shel Yisrael. So we see from there very clear proof that the Torah is the weapons of war of the Jewish people. So even though that at the moment they went up out of Egypt, they still did not have yet their weapons of war until they came to the desert. Nevertheless, it says they went up armed. Because immediately when they were ready to transverse the desert, as soon as they were willing to go in, and they didn't say, they didn't say, how are we supposed to survive? Without any growth of any kind of food to eat. Immediately they acquired the type of complete faith that we needed. So from the very beginning of their acquisition, it was considered as if they had totally enrooted this idea. That's why it says they went up armed. At the very moment that they went from Eretz Mitzrayim, from Egypt, and they went into the desert. And the completion for them of this total trust in Hashem was through the Yom Suf, through the splitting of the sea, going through the, can you just imagine, there's walls of water on every side of them, and they had total trust in Hashem, and that's where it was acquired. Now there's another way. We started off by saying there are two ways to look at this. Derech Sheni, the second way, Yishuv Mikroi Selu, to resolve these verses. Sha'am Hanizkar Kanhu Pchutim Sheb Yisrael Ve'erev Rav. So what we're saying here, that when it says Ha'am, this is very consistent with the Kli Yakar. He mentions the word Ha'am that is mentioned here is talking about two types of people. It's talking about the most inferior or the lowly amongst Israel and the Erev Rav. The Erev Rav were, according to the Kli Yakar, approximately 6 million of them. He says there were twice as many Erev Rav as there were Jews, which puts it up to about 6 million. And they went out, they were not Jews, they went out, Moses basically brought them with him. And they caused, at least a significant amount of them, caused a lot of trouble. And it's spoken about in the future they're also going to cause trouble. So they caused trouble then, they caused trouble throughout our history, and in the future there is actually a exile, a galut, that is attributed to them as well. Ki shem echad lehem, meaning that both the Pchutim, the inferior of the Jews, and the Erev Rav have one name. It's really one name. Kshamar, that's Am. V'hi b'shalach Paro es Am. When Pharaoh sent the people, who was he speaking about? The Erev Rav Yidaver. That was referring to the Erev Rav. He wanted to get rid of them too. For the very fact that he did not hold them back, he did not prevent them, he didn't protest, he didn't make any qualms about them leaving. It's very similar as if he sent them himself. We see the same concept of someone who doesn't prevent someone, who actually allows someone to leave. It's as if he sent them. So we have a verse in Bereshit, Shalchuni la'adoni. That was said by Eliezer, the slave of Abraham, in Genesis 24:24. So when he says, send me to my master, Shalchuni la'adoni, that is a concept of, like we're talking about Shiluach, B'shalach, that he sent me, so he's basically asking permission, please send me to my master. Yomer Yaakov El Lavan Shalcheni. Also Yaakov said to Lavan, please send me. Also back. You want to go back. That you can find in Genesis 30, verse 25. So we see Shalach here, that Pharaoh sent the people. We're talking about the Erev Rav, that just because he didn't hold them back, the same word Shalach means that he was willing to send them. Ki shiluach ha'amor kan al ha'erev Rav. So to here, our verse is talking about sending out the Erev Rav. And it was on account of them that Moses took them around the other way. So that they were not the ones that would turn around and head back to Egypt. These either lowly Jews or the Erev Rav, it's not exactly a fifth column. I mean, it could be called a fifth column, but you're talking about people who it would be a degradation of the morale of the people if they were in charge. So basically, if we went that way, and there was so many of them, and they wanted to turn back, it would have hit us real hard. But on account of Israel, that was not why they went around. That's not why Moses led us around the deserts in the beginning, not to go by the way of the Philistines, in case we would see war, but it was on account of the Erev Israel. Remember, Israel went up. Chamushim Muzuyanim. They went up with their weapons of war. Kihema Banim Emun Bam. They are children. They are the children who have complete faith. B'nei Ma'aminim. They are believers, children of believers. B'itchim B'tshuas Hashem. They are sure of the salvations of God. And that is their weapons of war. When they're going out to war, they're assured. They know they're going to win. But all those with the minimum amount of faith, they are coming from the Erev. Because the way was so close, meaning to say, those new people that joined up, that clung on to the Jewish people, they're the ones that came. They have not yet, because they were so new, they had not yet become entrenched with this high level of faith and emunah in Hashem. I think this explains it very well, and I just want to wish everyone a Shabbat Shalom. Kol Tuv.